let's take a closer look now with CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Good to have you on, sir. So let's take a look at this miss. It looks very close to the Ukrainian border, but to be frank, this is 25 miles inside Russian territory. And as you know, a lot of this territory here is actually controlled by Russian forces as well. So how surprising is a miss? I imagine that was intended for a target somewhere over here.
It's quite surprising, Jim, and the reason it's so surprising is that these aircraft, the Su-34, is designed to go ahead and actually be used as a standoff weapon. So as a standoff weapon, it can use these missiles to go attack targets very far away. When this bomb came off, it was probably a weapon that was designed in the old Soviet era, and it had been modified with GPS and wings. And as a result of that, those wings probably failed to deploy, and instead of going straight forward, it went down and hit an intersection right in the middle of Belgorod.
The U.S. has these as well. They're called JDAMs. You basically put some wings on there that you can control. So what you're saying, in effect, it was meant to fire somewhere over here, standoff or over the horizon, and instead dropped on Russian territory.
That's one possible scenario. The other scenario is that it was a deliberate act because it hit right in the intersection of a major street. And that is also kind of unusual, to say the least. And of course, that's a civilian target, and that's something that should not have happened at all.
Here's the other issue here, and this is a bigger picture problem for Russian aircraft, and that is that Ukrainian air defenses, they're not perfect. We see bombs and missiles dropping all the time, but they have effectively made Ukrainian territory a no-fly zone for Russian aircraft because the air defenses are significant enough to put those Russian pilots, in danger. Is that a disadvantage to Russian forces that they have to fire from this side of the border, in effect?
It is, absolutely, because if they were able to have air supremacy over Ukraine, they could fly anywhere throughout the entire country. Because they can't do that, because the systems are good enough to prevent a lot of that flying, and they did not achieve air supremacy or air superiority throughout the entire airspace of Ukraine. That means that this particular situation could happen much more frequently, and it also means that the Russians are at a considerable disadvantage in targeting. They can't target as accurately as they otherwise would be able to.
Listen, and as we said, it was a significant miss. That's the size of the crater there. But it's notable. Remember, early on, the assessments were that Russia would establish superiority or supremacy in the air in the early stages of the war. We're more than a year later, and they haven't been able to do it.
CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is live for us in eastern Ukraine. Nick, what is the Kremlin saying about what happened?
Yeah, very little, frankly, apart from that this was essentially an accident that is under investigation, according to Russian state media. Obviously deeply embarrassing, but perhaps less embarrassing than admitting that this sort of explosion may have been caused by Ukrainian armed forces. This was an Su-34 strike jet. It's entirely unclear whether the munitions simply fell off the aircraft as it was flying over Belgorod, a city to the northeast of Ukraine, not far from its border, or if there was some other mistaken targeting or firing incident here. As you say, it caused a significant crater, did a lot of damage to the side of an apartment block, leaving one woman with brain trauma, head injuries, and another woman with lacerations that were treated on the scene. Remarkable, frankly, that it didn't kill more Russian civilians, but also for those in Ukraine, often the target of indiscriminate, inaccurate, appallingly judged, indiscriminate bombing against civilians. Little comfort to see it happen to Russian citizens too, but we were with some women who've been sheltering in a basement of an apartment block for months when they heard the news over the radio, and to them they said it was the best thing they'd heard of in a while, but still an appalling sign of Russia's military effectiveness.
And Nick, the NATO Secretary General is in Germany right now meeting with Ukrainian officials. Jens Stoltenberg saying that Ukraine's future is in NATO, but he didn't give a timeline for that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, bear in mind that Ukraine, were it to join NATO while it's at war with Russia, would automatically, presumably, trigger Article 5, and then NATO would be part of that war as well. And so a lengthy timeline likely ahead. Ukraine's military are rapidly equipped here with NATO equipment, still far behind the standards required to join NATO. But here's the sentiments echoed by the NATO chief.
All NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a NATO member. But the main focus now is, of course, on how to ensure that Ukraine prevails.
Now, it's a very complex task. It requires unanimity across all of NATO members. It's even difficult to get Turkey and Hungary to fully sign on to Sweden and Finland, who aren't at war with Russia right now, to become part of NATO. But the key point there is not to be distracted from the key task at hand, and that is getting all the munitions that Ukraine needs now, tanks, anti-aircraft, to assist with the forthcoming Ukrainian counter-offensive that many think may be hours, days away. Back to you.
Yeah, and Stoltenberg also saying he wants Ukraine's military to be up to NATO's grade of weapons and munitions, etc. Nick Payton Walsh from Ukraine, thank you so much for that report.